Hello students, welcome back to chemistry class, which is brought to you by IOTA Virtual Learning Platform. On this platform, we learn how to treat past questions using different topics carefully selected from the WAEC syllabus. I still remain your tutor, Olawe Olabisi, and today we'll be considering a very important topic, which is chemical bonding. Chemical bonding is a very vital topic in chemistry. It has to do with the bonding or combining together of different atoms of elements to form a compound. Without chemical bonding, there cannot be interaction between different atoms to form compounds. And chemical bonding means the interaction between the outermost electron of atoms. Atoms are made up of different electrons, well arranged. This is the structure of an atom where electrons are arranged, and then the outermost electrons undergo bonding with another atom of element of another element or the same element to form a molecule or a compound. And the reason why elements combine is to attain a stable or duplex structure. That is, they are trying to be stable by completing the outermost shell, which in most cases is supposed to be 8 or 2. And they do so by gaining, losing, or sharing electrons, which leads to the formation of different compounds. And there are two categories of chemical bonding. We have the intermolecular forces of attraction. Intermolecular forces of attraction means the bonding that occurs between one molecule and another molecule because of the word inter. That's between water and another molecule of water. There is bonding. An example of this is hydrogen, metallic bonding, van der Waals forces. We also have intramolecular forces of attraction, which include ionic bonding, which is also known as electrovalent bonding, covalent bonding, which can be classified into two. We have the ordinary covalent bonding and the coordinate covalent bonding. And intramolecular forces of attraction occur between atoms of a molecule. Like in the case of water now, between hydrogen and oxygen, the bonding that takes place between hydrogen and bonding is intramolecular bonding, while the one that takes place between one molecule of water and another molecule of water is intermolecular bonding. And so we are going to be considering each of these types of electrons, and at the end of this class we have past questions, which helps us to treat more of the more aspect of the topic. The first one here is the formation of a ionic compound, and we're going to be using the Lewis dot structure to explain this. In ionic bonding, which is also known as electrovalent bonding, there is complete transfer of electrons, and this is usually from a metallic atom, that's an electropositive element, to a non-metallic atom, which is an electronegative element, which results into the formation of ions, and that's why we call it ionic bonding. And ionic bonding, a metallic element is actually elements that have their electrons at the outermost shell, like 1 or 2 or 3 valence electron at the outermost shell. The meaning of valence electron is the electron at the outermost shell, and bonding takes place between valence electron of different elements. That's the last shell of different elements. Take for instance now, you need the knowledge of atomic number here. Sodium is 11. If you arrange sodium, you have 2 on the first shell, 8 on the second shell, and then the last shell takes the remaining 1, which is 11. So it has 1 valence electron. It cannot gain 7 to attain an octet structure, but it can easily give out 1 here. So it will willingly give out. After losing the electron, it will become ion, that's sodium ion, which is electropositive because electron lost is negative. So after giving out electrons, element becomes positive. So the element that accepts the electron becomes negatively charged. So it is during this time when there is complete transfer of electrons between sodium and chlorine. Chlorine is 17. Arranging, we have 2, 8, 8. 2, 8. That's 10. The last shell takes 7. So these electrons are arranged in pair 2, 2, 2. Then the last one, which makes it 7, is in need of 1 more. So it accepts electrons from sodium completely. to become 18, while sodium becomes 10. In that case, sodium is now stable, and then chlorine is stable. And then you can see this dot diagram representing the number of electrons shared. This dot diagram shows that this is a valence electron of sodium, and this are the valence electron of chlorine, which is a need of 1 to make it an octet structure. So after that, sodium will become positively charged ion, while chloride ion becomes negatively charged. And so you have formation of ions which cancel out to become sodium chloride, provided they have the same number. Now the next one here is calcium chloride. The same thing happens here. We have 20, atomic number 2, 8, 8. Then the last 2 takes the remaining 2. Then what's the relation between calcium and chlorine? It means that if chlorine is reacting with calcium, chlorine only need 1. So it means it requires 2 chlorine to combine. Here 2, 8, 7, each taking 1 electron. And this is represented with the dot diagram. The dot diagram here represents the valence electron of calcium, while this represents the valence electron of chlorine. And at the end, calcium gives out to become calcium ions, and chloride ion collects to become chloride ion. Chloride collects to accept electrons to become chloride ion. And these two forms calcium chloride, meaning that 1 calcium reacts with 2 chlorine. The same thing also happens in magnesium oxide. I want you to work this out on your own. Magnesium is 12, oxygen is 8. So at the end, magnesium will give out 2 to oxygen. 2 oxygen has 2 and 6. It is in need of 2 more. So after accepting 2, it becomes stable. So we have magnesium oxide, which cancel out because it becomes magnesium ion, oxide ion. They cancel out because they have the same charges to become magnesium oxide. Now, one thing about ionic bonding is that as a result of the positive and negative charges in the ions formed, there's a kind of electrostatic attraction which makes the forms crystal lattice and makes them strong. So the properties of electrovalent bonding is that they are very, very soluble in polar solvent like water. Water is polar because it has 2 poles, hydrogen ion and hydroxy ion. So any compound that will be soluble must also form ions in it. So they conduct electricity in molten state, making them a good electrolyte. That is, these compounds, when in molten state that will mix with water, they are very, very active by conducting electricity. But if it is in a solid state, they won't conduct electricity because of they will not ionize in water. Their ions will not be active. So they form crystal lattice, which makes them very hard and have high melting point because of the strong bonds. So other examples of bonding are covalent bonding, which is ordinary and dative covalent bonding. The first one here is covalent bonding, which involves sharing of electrons between atoms of the same element or different elements, which results into the formation of molecules. So a very good example here is between oxygen and another oxygen. Now, they're sharing. Oxygen has 8, that's 2 and 6. Another oxygen has 8, 2 and 6. So the valence electron here, how do we arrange the 6 in the valence electron? 2, 2, 1, 1. Each in need of 1, 1 electrons left. And the same thing happened here, 2, 2, 1, 1. We have 2 inside, then 6 outside, which is 2, 2, 1, 1, which is in need of electrons. So bonding takes place here. Let me redraw this. 2, 6. And this 6 is drawn this way. There is a dot here, which means 2 electrons are missing. The same thing happened here. 2, 2. There is 2 inside. Then we have 1 in need of 1, 1 in need of 1. And so what happens is that this one here supplies the need of this. Then this electron here supplies the need of this, we cancel. This electron here supplies the need of this, while this is also supplied the need of this. And then you can see bonding taking place here, represented after the complete process. We have the 8 valence electron complete, and 2 bonds are formed because of the oxygen. So most covalent compound forms molecules like gases and liquids. So the bond is not as strong as ionic bonding. The same thing also occurs in carbon dioxide here, and also in ammonia. Ammonia is a gas, carbon dioxide is a gas, water is a liquid. Let's look at that of carbon, for instance. Carbon here is expected to be at the center. The atomic number of carbon is 6. So arranging carbon, we have 2 and 4. So how do we arrange the 4? We have 1 here, one alone, one here, one missing, one here, one missing, and then oxygen combined with carbon on this side, another oxygen on this side. How? We have oxidation number of oxygen to be 8, that's 2 here, then the remaining 6 is they are outside. 2, 2, 1 in need of 1, 1 also in need of 1. So sharing takes place between the two sides of this carbon. That is, this electron supply the need of this, supplies the need of this supply the need of this supply. And the same thing also occur on the other side of oxygen here. And then in that case, we have the Lewis diagram indicating the missing electrons here. And at the end, after sharing takes place, you can see that all of them have been, their needs have been met. It's like 2 electrons doing the work of 4 electrons. Sharing takes place on both sides, and then we have double bond on both sides, which results into carbon dioxide molecule. The same thing also occurs in water, which is between oxygen and 2 hydrogen. Oxygen is expected to be at the center. It has atomic number of 8. We have 2 on the inside and 6 outside. 2, 2, 1, 1, and 1 hydrogen. 2 hydrogen surrounds the oxygen. Hydrogen has atomic number of 1, so it has 1 electron and 1 is missing, at least to attain the first duplet structure, which is 2. The first shell is supposed to take 2, and it has 1 electron in need of 1 more. So it supplies the need of this oxygen, and oxygen also supplies the needs of hydrogen. The same thing also happens here. This supplies the need of oxygen, and this supplies the need. And then ammonia is another example. Between nitrogen and 3 hydrogen. Nitrogen is 7 atomic number. So we have 2 inside and 5 outside. 2, 2. Sorry, the 5 outside is 2, then 1, 1, 1. Each in need of 1, 1 electrons left to make them 8. So they combine with hydrogen and they share between themselves. Hydrogen is in need of 1. It accepts it from nitrogen. It's also supplied the need of nitrogen with 1, 1, 1. And so at the end, we have 1 nitrogen then surrounded by 3 hydrogen, which results into ammonia molecule. The last example here is ethane. Ethane is C2H4. That's between carbon and carbon, there's sharing of electrons because carbon has 4 valence electron. So with on this side we have 1, 1, 1, 1. On this side we have 1, 1, 1, 1. So this one supply the need of this. This electron supply the need of this. The same thing happens here. Sharing takes place. Then each carbon is surrounded by 2 hydrogen, which undergoes bonding on this side. Since this side is also 1, it undergoes bonding with hydrogen, which also has 1. The same thing happens here and here, and these are represented with the dots diagram showing, in this case now we're showing the empty electrons on each side, and here, that is carbon here is in need of 2 here, in need of 2 more here because that's 4 valence electrons instead of 8. And hydrogen is 1, 1, 1, 1. So what happens after sharing is that all their needs are met. Carbon is 8, carbon is 8 here, hydrogen is 2, hydrogen is 2, hydrogen is 2, hydrogen. And then at the end, we have double bond here, and then single bond here, resulting into ethane. So when there's sharing of electrons, the element shares 2 electrons, does the work of 4, and then molecules result, formation of molecules and like gas and liquid. And another example of intramolecular bonding, I've treated the first two, is a coordinate covalent bonding, which is very similar to ordinary covalent bonding, only that the molecules formed here are more volatile than coordinate covalent bonding. And it exists dative bonding, which is also known as coordinate covalent bonding, exists between a covalent compound or a covalent molecule and a proton. In this case, a proton is hydrogen. Hydrogen that is carrying a positive charges, meaning that, I told you earlier on that when elements gives out their electrons, they become positively charged. So after giving out the electrons here, it becomes +1, meaning that it is empty. So since hydrogen is empty here, because that's giving out the only 1 electron it has, because the atomic number is +1. So it will come around. Looking at the covalent compound of ammonia already, ammonia is covalent in nature because it's between nitrogen and 3 hydrogen. Sharing takes place because nitrogen is 7 here, 2 and 5. The 5 here is 2, then 1, 1, 1. Each in need of 1, 1 electrons each. So they combine with hydrogen, 3 hydrogen. Hydrogen has 1, it will supply the need of this side, while the one here also supply the need of hydrogen, making it 2. The same thing happens here. So 2 electrons are found doing the works of 4 on each point to form a covalent molecule. So bonding occurs between covalent molecule and a proton in dative bonding. And so these 2 electrons is not undergoing bonding, is called lone pair, while these 3 sides are called bond pair. So the lone pair here now, we attach to hydrogen ion, which is empty. Hydrogen claims these 2, and so at the end, the bonding is perfected. And so after hydrogen claims these 2, you can see the dot diagram representing the empty electrons, and at the end, after the electrons have been filled in, they are complete 2, 2, 2, 8, with this hydrogen ion combining to take these 2 lone pair on top. So we have H plus on top, while we have H down, because this H plus is empty, is coming around to claim the 2 of nitrogen, which is up here, because nitrogen is like this, is 7. So we have 2 here, 5 here, which is 2, 1, 1, 1. So this lone pair that is not undergoing bonding with hydrogen, you know, this 3 undergoes bonding with hydrogen. This 2 here is given out to hydrogen ion, and then we have ammonium ion being formed. The same thing also occurs in hydroxonium ion, which is between water, which is a covalent molecule, and hydrogen ion. Then properties of covalent compound is just the direct opposite of ionic compound. They exist in form of liquids and gas, are not solids. They don't form crystal lattice, so they definitely they will have low boiling points, except in water. And then there's an exception in formation of liquids and gases. Diamond and graphite, they are exceptions because they are covalent in nature, and diamond is the added substance now. So in most cases, in some cases or few cases, covalent compound forms hard crystal, or giant molecules as well. But in most of the cases, it's liquids and gases are made up of covalent bonding, which is not as strong as ionic bonding. They are weak. Then the most covalent compound are non-polar in nature. That is, they don't have the positive and the negative part of their atom. So they are soluble in non-polar solvent too, like petrol. And they do not conduct electricity because of the absence of these positive and negative charges in them. So the remaining part is the intermolecular forces of attraction, which are just 3. We have the metallic bonding. This is the force of attraction which exists between mobile electrons of metals and the positive ions of the metal atoms. What happens here is that most metals have free valence electron, just like I've explained. In the case of sodium, for instance, how do you know a metal? From the first 20 elements, if you can classify the elements into metal and non-metal by just arranging them into shells, you see that for elements like sodium, for instance, or lithium is just atomic number of 3. We have 2 here and 1 outside. So any element that has 1 electron outside, as a 1 valence electron or 2 or 3, we end up giving them out because they cannot gain 7 or 6 or 3 or 5 respectively. They end up giving out their metals. So most times these metals have free valence electron or free mobile electrons. There's a cloud of free mobile electrons embedded in, because the elements they are positive in nature, so like they are embedded in positive ions. So all this electrostatic attraction occur actually between the positive ion of the metals and the electron of the metals. There's a kind of attraction, and this holds the metals together and results into metallic bonding. The next one is the hydrogen bonding. This is an intermolecular force also which arises when hydrogen covalently combine with a strongly electronegative element. So there has to be a kind of difference in the electronegativity. That is, hydrogen is actually under the electropositive element, though it is not really electropositive. It's a weak electropositive element because it's not even a metal. So but most times we still use that electropositive. So and then on the other side we have an electronegative element that is highly electronegative. So in that case there will be a wide difference in their electronegativity. So compounds like hydrogen fluoride, between hydrogen and fluorine, or water, that's between hydrogen and oxygen of another. Say the hydrogen of this look at water, for instance, now, which is H2O, O, then two hydrogen. This is the hydrogen of one water molecule reacting with hydrogen of another, reacting with oxygen of another water molecule. So when you draw the structure of water between oxygen and hydrogen of one water here, which is H2O, we have covalent bonding, which involves sharing, and I've treated that earlier. But between this molecule of water, the hydrogen of it reacts with the oxygen of another molecule of water, that is hydrogen bonding, because the kind of dipole will be set up between the positive hydrogen and the electronegative elements. A very good example of such electronegative elements are nitrogen, oxygen, and fluorine. They are highly electronegative. And so when they react with hydrogen, there is a dipole meaning two poles will be formed, which is a positive and a negative pole. You can see here, these dotted lines represent the hydrogen bonding between one water molecule, another water molecule, and another water molecule. So the hydrogen of one water molecule reacts with oxygen of another water molecule. And so there is a dotted point here, which represents the hydrogen bonding. And then when this continues, it makes water to form a it makes water difficult to boil, and that's resulting to the high boiling point of water, which is 100 degrees Celsius, and also some other characteristics of water, like the surface tension, high surface tension of water. The last one here is the van der Waals forces, and under van der Waals forces we have it's actually a very weak force which exists in gases, and it exists in gases that are discrete, that is, that are short-lived. Those gases that sublime easily, or those solids that sublime easily, also are made up of van der Waals forces, like iodine crystal and naphthalene crystals. And most weak forces exist in gases, so to say. And van der Waals force is important in the liquefaction of gases, and is also important in noble gases. It forms the bond or the force in noble gas, those weak gases. And any substance that change directly from solid to gas directly contain van der Waals forces. These are the example of intermolecular forces between one gas and another gas, or between one atom and another atom. While intramolecular forces are the ionic, the covalent, and the coordinate covalent, which exist between atoms of a particular molecule, within the atoms of a particular molecule. Now, while intermolecular forces occur between one molecule and another molecule. Now, factors influencing the formation of compounds from ions. Now, for one element to combine with another element, the element must be willing to give out or gain or share. So what happens when elements gives out is that they have low ionization energy. What is ionization energy? It's actually the energy required to remove the valence electron of a gaseous atom to form a gaseous ion. That is, when elements find it easy to give out the electron, they don't need stress. It does not require much energy to remove their valence electron. Another one is the electron affinity. Now, so for electropositive element, they have low ionization energy. That's why they give out the electrons easily to elements like chlorine, which has electron affinity. They have the ability to attract electrons to themselves. Why? Because they are already drawing close to stability. Chlorine, for instance, now is 17, the atomic number. So we have 2 here, and the next shell taking is making it 10. Then the last shell takes 2, 2, 2, 1. So this one is in need of just one more. So we need to rather give out or lose 7 than gaining 1. So it will be easier gaining 1 than losing 7. So most times they accept electrons to become electronegative, and so their ionization energy will be high, and their electron affinity will also be high. It will require a very high energy to remove the electrons. So most times metals have low ionization energy, and non-metals have a high electron affinity, and there must be an electronegativity difference. That is, between one element reacting with another element, one must be electropositive, the other must be electronegative. But if the two are having both the equal measure of electronegativity or electropositivity, it will be difficult for one to give or share with another. And so these are the factors affecting the or influencing the formation of compounds from ions. And so here we are trading questions based on this topic. I want you to look at this question, treat them, after which you come back to treat them together.